So early this morning, I was dragging myself out of bed, and I happened at that point to take some time out, and I was thinking a little bit about getting ready for work, and I ended up turning on the television set, and as I did that, I I, I turned around and I did a double take because I was listening to the narration that was taking place on TV. And I heard a voice that was incredibly familiar, and I stopped. There was a documentary playing, an old-time documentary, and it's from a TV show that aired in the late 1970s, early 1980s. And the program, when it was on the air, oh, golly, we're going back now, probably, to the time I was in college. So I didn't see it a lot at the time because, as you know, most college students spend all of their time studying and getting ready for the important things in their lives. And I was no different than most students. I was much like a monk at the time, trying to get my work done on a daily basis to impress my professors so that I could get a degree, go out, and earn a living in this world. But I got familiar with the show later on because somebody started sending me in recent years clips on YouTube from that very program. And I was listening for a few minutes, and I thought, that's got to be him. That's got to be him. And then sure enough, in television, the host of a program or doing a news story does something usually called a stand-up, where the narration stops for a minute and the video that you see, and then all of a sudden you see the actual host or reporter, and this guy was standing in a field, actually at his own farm in Northern Virginia, and I looked at him for a minute. I thought, I am still being haunted. The miserable old coot was my company president and de facto boss for 7 years. And his name is David. Well, in his network news days, his name was David Schumacher, and now he goes by the name of David Shoemaker. In mid-career, he changed his name. And there he was on my television set, haunting me still as I was getting ready for work this morning. I just quickly went into the bathroom, started cleaning up, showered and shaved, and did all of those things, and did my best to ignore it. But I did send a message to some friends and said, you won't believe what I saw first thing getting out of bed this morning. A lot to talk about today. I have a lengthy list of things that I came across in the last 22 hours since I stepped off the show and started getting ready for today's program. Big story, and we've been carrying it here at the News Radio 1310 KLIX all morning about the woman who, and this is one of those things where somebody is already contrite and in search of redemption, but she is accused of embezzling in excess of $500,000. That is over $500,000 for those people who are still doing the math on that, from the College of Southern Idaho. But she brought attention to the matter. She felt so much guilt about all of it that apparently, according to the reports I've seen, she went to her bosses and said, look, I've done this. So she is now accused of taking this money. Remember, even when someone admits to it, this is still an allegation. It's going to go through court, and we have to wait for that process to end. But I've got to tell you, as I was looking over the story, it did strike me that the woman might have been a little confused. Now, apparently it's to cover gambling debts, or at least to go gambling with, and that is an illness. I don't have a gambling illness, but I've known people who did, and it can take quite a toll on an individual. But we don't treat it like we do other illnesses. Yet we do hear that it is one, and so I don't know if there's going to be at least some sort of effort to go easy on this woman when it comes to the court system, because number one, she brought attention to it, and they may just say you got to pay it back. You're going to have to do some time, and probation probably for many years following that, and you won't be allowed to work around money anymore. And I think that that's probably a good argument to be made in that particular case. She was even unaware how much was gone. She hadn't been keeping any records. She had assumed it maybe was just a tenth or a fifth of the amount of money that had gone walking away. So somebody at some casino somewhere apparently has done very well off the finances of the College of Southern Idaho. And there's going to be some question about the security there, although she did not have access to the locked safe, but she had access to the room that the safe was in during working hours when the safe might be unlocked. I don't know. I mean, how many safeguards do you have to put in place? You can only do so many background checks on a person, and if someone has an illness like that develops, that's something that comes along down the road. So I don't know that internally that anyone has to be pushed to the wall, and we don't have to have demands of why did you do that and Why didn't you pay better attention to everything that happened to be going on? A couple of other things we're dealing with today. If you are driving this morning, at least the sun is up now, and that is a huge advantage because for those of us who were driving into work when it was still dark outside, it was not easy this morning. There's a great deal of fog out there. When I first looked out the window this morning, I thought it must be very warm because of the level of the fog that I was seeing outside. But when I walked outside and I put my feet down on the sidewalk, I realized we were dealing with some black ice again. There were going to be some issues with that this morning. In fact, 29 right now for our temperature at our studios at News Radio 1310 KLIX, looking for a high today of 33. Now, some warmer weather, I guess, is coming in late this weekend, and we'll all be dealing with that. But driving to work this morning, very, very difficult. And I was always told when I was younger, you don't turn on the bright lights in the fog because that only reflects the light back at you. But I had an opportunity, at least for a couple of times, to turn on the bright lights today. And I've got to be honest with you, I actually thought that improved somewhat my visibility. But doing that in a municipality, not a good idea, especially with a lot of oncoming traffic. So what you try to do is you try to squint and you try to look for the yellow lines on one side of you and the white lines on the other, and you hope you stay in between that. And the other thing that caught my attention before I even got on the air today, I've been watching all of these updates on the situation in France. Now, they know who actually pulled off the shooting. At least they believe they know who pulled off the shooting. One person is, I'm told, in custody. Two others still, as they used to say in the old film noir era, on the lam. So two guys are still on the run, but they know who they are. I don't think they're going to get all that far. But we went into this in a bit more depth yesterday, but a couple of overnight observations. All over the world, and I mean in cities not only in France, but in the United States, people are walking around holding up signs saying, "We are not afraid," and we support the free speech of these people who were publishing this magazine. Couple of notes on this. You can hold up all of the signs that say, "We are not afraid," and you can bring a few thousand people out to a rally to say, "We are not afraid." But keep in mind that the people we're up against, they're not afraid as well. These people are absolutely fearless. It's that notion that they have that they are soldiers of Allah, and that is God, and that because of that, they are righteous in their cause. So to quote, what is it? I don't know how many dozens and dozens of times it appears in the Christian Bible, be not afraid. Well, they're not afraid either. So you can march through the streets and hold up your signs, and I'm sure it makes you feel a little bit better saying, I went down to the rally, but it's not going to solve this problem. And I mentioned it yesterday. Ultimately, the only way to solve this problem is, it's not pretty, it's not pleasant, but it's to take out more of them, far more of them, than they take out of us. That's how wars were won in the past. None of this public relations effort to bring toys and open hospitals and go around and give candy to the children. No, they were won by, and I always still love that line in the movie Michael Collins. I'm a Liam Neeson fan. I went to see the movie many, many years ago when it first premiered in the 1990s, where he's trying to explain, playing the role of Michael Collins, the Irish revolutionary. He's trying to explain this to his comrades who are working with him in the Irish Republican Brotherhood, which later became morphed into the Irish Republican Army. But he's trying to explain to them when they're complaining about the messes that he and his men are leaving behind. In other words, dead people and lots of blood. He says, war is sheer bloody mayhem. And until that's understood by the people on our side, the other guys don't have a problem with that. And if we don't, a friend of mine sent me a whole series of links this morning. Dearborn, Michigan, in March of last year, so we're 10 months away from that, adopted Sharia law. Dearborn was settled, or at least primarily it was settled long ago, but over time in the 1950s, a lot of Yemenis from the southern tip of the Arabian Peninsula, they moved to Detroit to work in the automobile industry. And over the years, even though at the beginning most of them became very Americanized, now they're getting more and more radicalized because, well, the economy doesn't provide the automobile jobs and the great lifestyle, so they've got to blame someone, so they're blaming Western culture. So to some degree, they have adopted at this point of the game, Sharia law. I think that we've got to be very concerned about the direction that's going. Now, to some degree, they cannot go out and chop people's heads off, burn their wives, or stone people to death because somebody decided to have an affair with someone they weren't married to. We're still going to see local laws, you would hope, supersede all of that. But he sent me a whole series of links to that very city. For instance, parents who complained that at school there was a notice that went around about an Easter egg hunt. And these people were inflamed by the notion that their children would have to hear about that. That's the problem with these people is their religious faith does not stand the test of a challenge. If you have to go out and kill people because of a cartoon or because of an Easter egg hunt or because they're not wearing a veil, it's because you know deep down in that your lifestyle, and this is not a faith of intellect. There was a fellow last night, I happened to see him, he was either on Greta Van Susteren or on the Kelley File. I was in and out of the room at the time when it was on television, but he was a fellow who ended up serving jail time. He was an Islamic radical, and while in jail, it suddenly struck him one day, you know what? We're really appealing to all of the violent illiterates around the world, but we're not necessarily appealing to the people who could really bring about some change and a better way to live with the rest of the world. And he's turned the corner. He's gone straight, if you will. A line I heard the first time when I was watching the TV show as a kid, Alias Smith and Jones, where two bank robbers go straight. Every episode, they're always telling someone, we've gone straight. No one believes them. But I think there has to be a lot said about that we need to figure out a way until we can. There's no dialogue at the moment because there's just not enough of them to have a dialogue with. And the other part of this, when I hear complaints from people of that particular background, they'll never say, well, we're terribly sorry about what happened. They have to say, well, we're terribly sorry about what happened, but, however, although, they always have to qualify it because they feel that they're the victims. They are always, they'd make great liberals, wouldn't they? Because they always feel that somehow somebody has harmed them and they've got to somehow even the score. And if they can't do it through government, they'll do it at the end of the barrel of a gun. And at this point, if you think if it's happening in Paris, France, it's certainly going to happen in other places as well. Where I used to live in Binghamton, New York, I was a television news director in the late 1990s in that community. There was a training camp just outside of town, Sharia training camp. And these people have these camps set up all over the country. This is going to be a very serious problem if we don't get a better grasp of it. And I know that we say, well, our current laws will not allow us to really challenge all of this. But maybe the only way to save Western culture is to grab some ocean liners and tell all of these people, if you don't like it, there you go. And if you need a little help, I'll pack for you. In fact, I'll carry you onto the boat and we'll send you away. We've got more on the way. You're listening to Bill Colley this morning on Top Story, 1310 KLIX. I do want to mention, of course, you can reach us, telephone number following the other side of this, at 736-0300. That's 736-0300. I've got to share a quick story. I saw this last night. Somebody emailed it my way. Poor Al Sharpton. Yeah, I don't really have a lot of sympathy for the man, but there is a story that popped up on Breitbart yesterday, and there was an investigation of a man in New York who was accused. He was a doctor. He was accused of rape. Now, as it turns out, he was cleared, and he has gone back to work, but one of his patients was the Reverend Al. And while police were going through the evidence, they discovered the prescription that Reverend Al has for Viagra. And somehow this made it to a reporter at the New York Daily News, who then telephoned the Reverend about it, who seemed completely floored at first and didn't quite know what to say and sputtered, and then finally said, well, I am 60 years old. So he confirmed it. But apparently that's without that, I suppose he wouldn't have much fire in the belly for anything. So it may give him the fortitude to get through every day and stir up the trouble that he generally stirs up. I do want to point out we have a guest coming up in a few minutes from the Twin Falls County Sheriff's Department, and that's just on the way a short while from now. But a couple of things, a little bit of housekeeping business. I was mentioning in the tease, that's that little 25-second thing you hear before the show starts, about a story that came out of North Dakota, and that is they are considering the partial, not whole, I don't know how this works, partial legalization of prostitution. And a lot of us who've been watching the developments over the last 15, 20 years, now that we've got a gambling casino on every corner in the United States, and governments pretty much milk that for revenue, we are now seeing some states legalizing marijuana so they can, milk that for revenue. But then again, these budgets just keep growing and growing and growing. So this may be the last great domino to fall in the culture wars. But once that's done, I don't think there's much else that anyone can actually legalize and tax. You're up next. You're with Bill Colley on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX. What's on your mind?
Good morning. I had the misfortune of watching CNN News this morning, and Mr. Cuomo, the reporter interviewer, was speaking with a French official. I just take him to be something that he must have been the French secret police or FBI or whatever and some lady, and they could not reiterate enough times how these murderers had they had nothing to do with radical Islamists, and so they were demonstrating this mindset that they know better and they can tell other people who they are or who they aren't, even though these people self-identify. They have self-identification, and to me, it just boggles my mind how all these intellectuals and officials can stand and tell people, no, you're really not radical Islam.
Wasn't there some evidence when there's some video? People were, everyone's got a video camera now on their cell phone. People were standing on their balconies and taking pictures of all of this as it was taking place. And you actually hear these people shouting, God is great, and shouting that this is their vengeance. That's what
I'm saying. It's amazing how people can say, I'm an American, I'm a conservative, I'm a liberal, and they go, oh no, you're not. We know better what you are. and to make one more comment, a few years ago, I was watching a TV program. And there was an Israeli official. I can't remember which cabinet or if he was a minister but anyway, he said, yes, we know that the Islamists that they are willing to die for their cause in the name of Allah. And he said, all I can say is we are more than happy to help all of them that we can get to paradise.
Yeah, punch their ticket, so to speak. Thank you much for the call. I've got time for one more caller, probably just one more in this segment of the program. And you would be next on News Radio 1310 KLIX on Top Story.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. My problem is that during the 60s and 70s, the Italian government came forward and proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that an Operation Gladio had been commenced against them by the CIA, blowing up school buses and public transport.
Hold on a minute. What's this got to do with the current topic?
Well, come on. A couple of guys in black uniforms saying,
you heard about great. This. Where's your citation?
Citation is, well, first of all, Operation Gladio. It's public knowledge.
Okay, so you've just come up with a name. Where did you?
Operation Gladio. It's a government document that's been declassified.
I don't need to give you any more. Well, it's always nice to call up and, whether true or imagined, share something like that, especially if you feel that it's an opportunity to vent about your country, as so many of you do all of the time, and I do it myself. So I'm not. But the fact of the matter is, coming out of left field with that, it's got nothing to do with the subject at hand, and I don't really know why the United States government had many issues with the Italian government. Perhaps somebody got a bad plate of spaghetti. Is that politically correct? I don't know. I'll hear about it if it isn't. But yeah, I think that perhaps if you want to come out with that, I don't mind hearing about it. But maybe you could provide some more evidence other than just saying this happened. It takes a little bit more than that. A little bit of background on that would be helpful. We have more on the way. Going to talk a little bit about public safety in just a few minutes on News Radio 1310 KLIX. Top Story with Bill Colley. There was a guest in our studio, and if I'm going to be polite here, I'm going to make sure just give me a minute. I'm going to have to turn up his microphone a little bit. Otherwise, you're going to hear him off in the distance, and it'll sound like we're both talking into a tin can. But I got to make sure which microphone it is here. Ken Bensel joining us from the Twin Falls County Sheriff's Department. Welcome.
Thanks, Bill. Good to be here.
There it is. We got both voices. That's always a good way to start a segment.
Absolutely.
Hey, you came in with a list of the 10 most wanted today, giving people a little bit of an update?
Yes. Yeah. I brought two with me today. These are the people that the sheriff's office would most like to find. The first is Mary Erickson. She's out of the Buell area, and she's got a $10,000 warrant for grand theft. Mary is 33 years old, born in 1981. She's about 5'7", weighs about 136 pounds, with brown hair and green eyes. The second person that we'd like to get your assistance in helping us find would be Matthew Cadena. His last name is spelled Cadena. He's approximately 45 years of age, born in 1969. He's 6'2", 285 pounds, brown hair and green eyes. His warrant is $20,000 for excessive DUI. If you have any information on how we can get a hold of these two people and bring them into our jail so they can go to court, please call us at our dispatch center at 735-1911 or Crime Stoppers, where you can be eligible to receive a cash reward.
Now, in a lot of cases, these people are really just almost hiding in plain sight. They can be either in a neighboring county, and sometimes they'll alter their appearance a little bit, maybe shave a beard or something like that.
Absolutely.
But it's been my experience that usually people, for the most part, they don't go too far away from home in these situations.
Right. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if they were in Twin Falls County or a neighboring county, but somewhere relatively close by to maintain family ties and whatnot.
And sometimes the friends and family don't even know that
they have a warrant.
Right.
Yeah.
And occasionally, sometimes the people don't, the accused doesn't know that
they have a warrant.
Right.
Yeah.
That'll pop up.
They forgot that they had a court date and they're just hanging out there.
I was going to ask you about the drive-in this morning because I had it was an experience coming in the dark, at least, driving this morning. A morning like this with a little bit of black ice. I don't think there was as much as the other day, but some of that, you throw in a little fog in there, that can really make things interesting out there. Yeah,
my wife was actually headed to work this morning and couldn't see getting over the Hanson Bridge because of the fog. In the last 2 days, we've had the black ice, but not the fog. And we've had quite a few crashes as a result of it. We had a rollover the other day near Eastland, and just a lot of folks that aren't giving themselves enough time to get to work. And with those conditions, even coming into the parking lot this morning, hit the brakes to turn around and just kept sliding straight. Was glad that there was nobody in the parking lot. But yeah, just give yourself some extra time and some extra room. And you might have four-wheel drive that does well going forward, but everybody has to stop, and whether you have a four-wheel drive or not.
One thing we can say is for a lot of people, when certain conditions hit like this, you say business is good. For instance, when it gets cold, the guy selling wood, business is good. But right. You don't want to, in your line of work, business is good when nothing happens.
Absolutely.
And so it's sort of the opposite of that.
Yeah, one of the hardest things with crashes because of inclement weather is to see not only the property damage, but oftentimes you see bodily damage, and it's never fun to see somebody that goes through a crash. We should point out it may stay a little slippery out there for a while because at the moment still 29 at 8:37, and we're looking for a high only of 33 today, so it may not get much above freezing in some particular spots. Ken Menzel is our guest this morning from the Twin Falls County Sheriff's Department. A lot of people have been asking questions about the Belgian Shepherd. He's back home, and he survived pretty well out there for a few days in the cold weather. Absolutely. Did very well. Met up with some other dogs and just kind of hung up in a sheltered area. I think he was fed. He didn't seem malnourished. Very, very fast dog. He got a clean bill of health from the vet, and he is with a new handler just because Deputy Wiggins is going to take some time to recover. He's doing well in his training, seems to be doing very well. Not going to give him much of a time to have any downtime, just get back to work and business as usual for Drago. People should realize that the Belgian Shepherd has a lot of the same traits as a German Shepherd, but it's not completely the same. And there are 4 types of Belgian Shepherds. We were talking off air. I'm a former owner of one. And even of the 4 types, there's differences in their makeup. And so there are. Really, it's one of that 4 that you're looking at when you like to bring them into service. Right. And this current dog, the newest dog that we have, Drago, we actually went to Florida to pick him up from a well-known kennel. And when our deputy went to Florida to pick out his new dog, Drago was the one that presented himself to Deputy Wiggins as being one that he could work with very well. Had some very good traits as to what we're looking for in a police canine. And through the ordeal that he went through with the crash and whatnot, still just an amazing dog. We're very fortunate to have had the chance to pick him out, and I think he'll do very well, even despite the crash. We're probably most likely going to be able to work through those issues. I was going to say, of all the modern innovations in policing, especially the technology that have made it easier, the dog still remains probably one of the best tools you've ever had, and there's nothing modern about it. Right. A dog can't lie. Through the training and experience that we give those dogs, they go through a lot. Just to get certified that first time, there's a lot of training. And then the continued training, just a remarkable tool.
Before we wrap up, again, you're looking for a couple of people, a couple of folks. We've got about 30 seconds here. If people know where these folks are, just give the Sheriff's Department a shout.
Yep. Give us a shout at 735-1911 at dispatch or Crime Stoppers 735-2307.
All right, super. Hope to see you again in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, Bill.
All right, super. We've got more on the way. Ken Menzel joining us this morning from the Twin Falls County Sheriff's Department. 8:40, 29. Well, no, wait a minute. A big warm-up, 30. You might as well take that jacket off and start dancing around. There is when we talk about our temperatures here, we've got to mention that while we're dealing with some fog and some slippery road conditions, most of the country right now, people are just living in misery. One of my former state representatives from the last place I lived, he was actually a neighbor of mine and a friend, but he was posting on Facebook this morning that he couldn't believe that schools were delayed 2 hours because of cold weather. And I think I checked the temperature and it was 11. When I was a junior in high school, I remember one morning, well, it wasn't terribly windy out, so we weren't dealing with a lot of wind chill. But I remember one time actually walking to school when the temperature was 18 below zero. Now, growing up in a small town where when I was very young, we had 3 traffic lights, but one of them never worked, so they put in a 4-way stop sign, and we ended up with 2. So it wasn't the biggest place. And when you're walking across town to school, I suppose it wasn't much more of a 10 to 15-minute walk. But 18 below zero is still pretty chilly, and nobody delayed school and nobody closed school. He was trying to bring up the point that what we've done is we've become soft. And now I realize that there are children who might have to stand at bus stops. And the concern is a lot of people build those little sheds for their children. The children stand out in the shed just to stay, out of the wind. But the fact of the matter is it really going to be any warmer 2 hours later? And I mentioned that yesterday. Often the coldest temperature is not at dawn, but it's an hour after dawn. So you can delay school for a couple of hours. It doesn't necessarily mean conditions are going to be any better. But I think there's something to be said about that. Yes, we're very, very cautious, and we try to do everything we can to protect our children and insulate them. But is it really such a good idea? Because it can be a very, very harsh world out there. 8:45, you're listening to Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX, newsradio1310.com if you're listening online. Bill Colley with you this lovely morning. Also, you can reach our program by giving me a call at 736-0300, 736-0300. Hey, I mentioned this story just ever so briefly. Legalized prostitution. There you go. I almost said prosecution. That is already legal. Legalized prostitution. SayAnythingBlog.com. That's written by a fellow in North Dakota named Rob Port. And Rob Port is a former, actually, he's a Lodge brother, former talk show host, and he was affiliated with Sean Heenan, who is occasionally a backup for Sean Hannity on his program. But a few years ago, he launched this political blog, and he talks about energy issues because that's important in his state. But he also talks about a lot of what used to be called cultural issues. Not that there are all that many of them left that we're actually still discussing. And he's become, over time, more of a libertarian in his views, and he's writing a piece at his blog, which is considered, I guess, even though it's in North Dakota, he's in Bismarck, I think it is considered one of the 100 most influential blogs in America. Somebody's keeping track of that. I know. Doesn't that seem... There's an office somewhere, and a guy sitting in a corner office, and his job is to track the most influential blogs in America. All right, we know that. But he's saying that in an effort to try and define human trafficking, which used to mean just prostitution, that legislators in states all over the country are doing all sorts of backflips to get on board so they can say that they are opposed to human trafficking. Well, who wouldn't be opposed to something you would label that way? But in many cases, he said, it is traditional prostitution. He said the laws have been now written in his state to the point where they're actually legalizing a great deal of prostitution. If this actually gets passed and signed by the governor of that state, they will legalize a great deal of prostitution. And he goes on to say, big deal. He said, who's getting hurt if it's an adult woman and it's her own choice? And he says, if you legalize it and you take all of the criminals out of the background, she can run her business on her own. Now, I don't know if it would actually happen that way. There are organized crime people who would come in probably and still want to try to take a cut of it. But you know what's going on here. Taxation. And every government around the country, every state government around the country, and in the next couple of weeks when you watch C-SPAN, you'll get to see all of your governors. You'll get to see Governor Otter in the next couple of weeks. What they'll do is his State of the State address on Monday will be taped. He's going to join us a few days after that. He's not available because of some meetings the following day, but he's going to join us a bit later, most likely next week, to talk about his goals, outline his goals for the coming year, legislative session and the like. But C-SPAN picks all of these up and they show them tape delay, but you'll get to see generally all 50 states over the course of a few weeks on that particular TV channel. Most of these governors are going to be talking about their revenue challenges. They are challenged just about everywhere by pension benefits, promises that they made that aren't necessarily being kept. They've got to deal with all of that. And they have these rising costs for that health care insurance for a lot of these retirees, plus the rising cost for current state workers. Plus, as we know, they need a lot of money pumped into the roads, we're being told. And I think some people out there told us yesterday it's probably a good idea. How do you meet all of these expenses when people still object to paying higher and higher taxes? Because we all feel squeezed at some point. So they say, well, Colorado legalized dope. Washington legalized dope. Look at the revenue stream. And all right, the casinos, they brought in some money for a while, but that's pretty well tapped out. So now what is left? Well, it's prostitution. So all of a sudden there will be government-sanctioned cat houses, as there are already in Nevada. And what they'll do is they'll take some money out of that. The government will get its cut. The sad thing is, you saw it with gambling. When states adopted lotteries, they would have these commercials where a guy would come out and say, hey, all I needed was $1 and a dream, and he's standing on a yacht, as if he could afford a yacht after the government took its chunk of the revenue out of that. And remember, lottery payments are generally annuities, and if you take the lump sum, you're going to get much smaller than what was posted on the side. And so it's ridiculous to think that somebody is buying a baseball team or buying all of these yachts after they win lotteries. That generally doesn't happen. But they had to promote it. They had to go out and they had to promote it. They had to say, hey, come play the lottery, because if you didn't, they wouldn't get the revenue. And now you see, in fact, a minister once told me he was driving down the highway one time. He saw a sign on the highway promoting a casino at the next exit. And he said, not 2 miles down the road, there was a sign, and that sign was promoting, get this, help for gambling addicts. All right, so then they had to take the money they got out of their cut of the casinos and put the money back into treating people for gambling addictions. And when we get to prostitution, will there actually be commercials like there were for the lottery? Hey, guys, single? Alone this weekend? Hey, have we got a deal for you? For only $99 all night long. Are we headed that way? 736-0300, top story. We've got a caller with us in just a moment. News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. You're on the air with Bill Colley, and what's on your mind?
Well, as for the legalization of marijuana, it was legalized for a very long time in the United States up until recently, and then all it did was lead to bloodshed, just like the alcohol issue.
1937, in fact, when it was William Randolph Hearst who actually campaigned against it. It was called hemp, of course, then. He used the more exotic-sounding marijuana.
Because he was trying to corner the market on paper. Hemp is good, and there's nothing wrong with legalized marijuana.
There's nothing wrong with hemp.
Yeah.
It's the problem with today's marijuana is so potent, if you're going to be smoking the buds, you're going to do some long-term damage.
It's potent because you made it illegal. They upped the game on it so that they could sell more.
So if it was legal, we'd have like light beer from Miller. We'd have a light marijuana, is what you're telling me.
Oh, please don't give your pathetic little arguments. It's about the fact that it's to make money. It's to give a bunch of goons with black uniforms a job.
Well, it certainly is giving a lot of people jobs, but I think that not everybody shares your opinion out there. I think most Americans don't smoke dope. Still don't smoke dope, but most actually, I think you might have 50%, at least those who went to college. I thank you for the call, who actually do. Look, I agree with them. We already have legalized tobacco and alcohol, and if you want to sit around at night in your home and you're not bothering anyone else, and you want to pound nails into your skull, go right ahead. I'm not going to get in your way. If you want to sit around at night and slice open your arms, cutting yourself, I think it's terrible. But you know what? You're an adult. I guess you can do that too. If you want to go out to the canyon and you want to jump off without a parachute and see how far you can fly, I guess go right ahead. Who's getting in your way? But on the other hand, I think in the long run it might be harmful. Alcohol is harmful. Nicotine, tobacco is harmful. So, why do we keep getting these arguments? If you want to, what the guy is saying, and a lot of these people are saying is, I want to smoke more dope and I don't want to get arrested, so we need to legalize it. Fine, all right. But for the most part, most people who are smoking it aren't getting arrested, and most of them are doing it quietly in the privacy of their homes. But as we know in Colorado, when they get behind the wheel of a car, you're not only adding to the fact, people are already driving stoned. I'm well aware of that. But now, when the government says it eases back, it's funny how this works. There's a liberal columnist named Ruth Marcus from the Washington Post, and she's been on a campaign the last few months against this legalization, even though she admits she was a marijuana smoker for many years, because she said once you drop that prohibition, you essentially say, hey, go right ahead. And a lot, not everybody, but there are people out there who go a little overboard, and I don't want to be on the road with you. You're next on the show. And in fact, I want to mention right now, 30 degrees at 8:53, and you're on News Radio 1310 KLIX, and what's up with you?
Hey, good morning. Look at Colorado. Their marijuana. The kids are getting their pop. They're getting, they're overdosing on it. Excuse me. So it's not this great a thing that these liberals are talking about.
The liberals want to get rid of cigarettes, but then they tell you, on the other hand, go ahead and smoke all the dope you want.
Right. Thanks.
Hey, thank you much for the telephone call. As a reformed cigarette smoker, I will attest that it wasn't really good for me. I did it for about 14 years, and then one day I just suddenly said I don't want to do this anymore, and I stopped sometime back in the 1990s, never went back to it. And it's a horrible thing. On the other hand, it is legal, and hey, again, if we want to take the complete libertarian argument, if you want to go home and start playing Russian roulette in your living room and no one else is around and gets hurt, go to it. It'll be, if we actually somehow improve the gene pool that way, might not be such a bad thing. And we have another caller joining us. 8:55 now on News Radio 1310 KLIX, and you're up next. Hello?
Hello. I was listening to the radio. I wasn't listening to you.
All right, go ahead.
They did a study, and they found that marijuana does harm the brain and harm your body. There is no such thing as medical marijuana, and there's too many DUIs on the road now.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say. Thank you.
I thank you very much for the telephone call. I don't really have an issue with it if someone's not bothering anybody else. The problem is that sometimes people let their guard down, they go to a party or whatever, and then they smoke it all up, and then they got to drive home, or they think they've got to drive home, and it's the same. It's no different than with alcohol in that sense. We have another caller joining us. You're on 1310 KLIX, also newsradio1310.com online. What's up with you?
Yeah, good morning, Bill. As far as doing the study on marijuana, they did the study on alcohol too, but I don't care about that. What I'm getting at is you were talking about legalizing prostitution.
Sure.
That's where the downfall of this whole country, all this downfall of the country comes to, the legalization. You see, they can't make prostitution lawful. They can make it legal if the people refuse to live by law and go to their legalism, looking to men rather than to God for what they do.
Well, as a weekly churchgoer, and sometimes much more frequently than that, I do try to do that in my own personal life, but I do admit it's a little difficult to try to. We're governed right now in the United States by a constitution, and in our individual states by constitutions, and not necessarily by the Bible. And I thank you for the call. I understand where he's coming from. Prostitution, from a personal standpoint, let's take government out of this for a minute. From a personal standpoint, we are headed down the road towards Sodom and Gomorrah. If you think about all of the sins that were going on in those communities, well, we're pretty well, we long ago crossed that river. And ultimately, when we get this far culturally, the question is, can we come back? And has anybody ever really stopped and thought about what the ultimate consequences of this? For all of those old 1960s hippies who now run the country in government, in Washington and in many state capitals and in academia and running corporate boardrooms and running the entertainment industry, have any of them actually really ever considered, the long term? There was no time to study their cultural revolution and what the ultimate impact would be. And unfortunately, if it turns out that it destroys the country, then what? Are they just going to sit back and say, sorry? Actually, they'll say, sorry. Be more like that. One more hour ahead. Bill Colley with you on News Radio 1310 KLIX and Top Story, and also newsradio1310.com. And a lot of to talk about. I have a list this morning that is, well, since our caller mentioned, of course, getting right with God, a couple of stories that I came across. Wall Street Journal had a very popular story this week, says science is proving that there, yes, indeed, is intelligent design in the universe. Who knew? All of that coming up. Yeah, that and $2 will get you a cup of coffee. You know, that's inflation for you. That statement used to actually be, that and 75 cents will get you a cup of coffee. I stopped in a restaurant the other day, and I had an iced tea with my dinner, and the iced tea cost a quarter of what my dinner did. So we're all dealing with a lot of that. Have a very special guest in studio with us this morning. Kelton, I've got to see which one of these microphones you're on. You want to say hello?
Hello.
Okay, it's not that one.
It's not that one.
Let's try this one.
How about this one?
I think you're there.
Hello.
No, let's try this one. We're going to keep doing this until one works.
That's fine.
Oh, there you are.
There I am. Okay.
Kelton Hatch joining us this morning. And it's Idaho Fish and
Game.
So Idaho. So IDFG.
IDFG.
All right, because it's probably easier just to say the name than go by the acronym.
Yeah. Typically on that, I mean, yeah, you use acronym a lot when you're writing checks to us because it's easier to write IDFG than Idaho Department of Fish and Game, but
saves you writer's cramp.
Yeah, it saves you writer's cramp on that. So, how are you doing?
Pretty good. In fact, when I was first moving here, one of my old bosses, he's now in St. Louis, Missouri. He was a huge fan of the movie A River Runs Through It, and the first thing he started talking to me about was fishing here.
Yeah.
And this might be, if you look all over the country, there's only probably one of the top 5 fishing states.
I would put it as top 1. I mean, Montana's going to argue with us, but we've got 680 miles of wild river. We got salmon that run in here from the ocean to the state and steelhead. We've got sturgeon in our rivers. And we've got blue ribbon trout streams right here in this area, and you can catch bass, a walleye, bluegill, perch. I mean, yeah, we've got everything.
The river, though, is the real attraction, isn't it?
It is. Not necessarily the Snake River. It's not as productive as a lot of our other streams, but you got Silver Creek, Big Wood, Salmon Falls Creek Reservoir, and all the tributaries that go to that, the Jarbidge, some of the Malad River, and these different streams that are around here. They're smaller, and they're not as large as the Snake. The Snake does offer a lot of opportunity for bass and for sturgeon, and so there is some opportunity there. But for what Idaho's really known for, you have to get back into the prettier part of the states. You get away from the populations. And
it's not just fish because it's such a game-rich state too, as well. I don't know where I even read it the last few days, but there was a history one time in many of the government lands, and what the federal government owns about 2/3 of the state.
Yeah, it's 63%, 65% right in there.
It's really, really a large number. But they were there was an effort to actually an agreement made so to allow hunters to hunt some of the big game, to actually trap it and move it off those lands in some cases, and off parklands and the like. Mm-hmm. And that really saved that whole industry, because it is an industry, at least from a tourist perspective.
Well, it's huge. I mean, the revenue drawn into the state of Idaho is like $2.3 billion from hunting and fishing. I mean, that's what people bring into the state. And for us, non-residents make up 50% of the state's budget. We only sell 10% of our tags to them, but because of those 10% of the tags and the higher prices that they pay. But the cool thing about it, I mean, this is really a destination spot for upland game bird hunters, trophy mule deer hunters, and trophy elk hunters. And we've got incredible pronghorn. I mean, if you like to hunt and fish, you move to the right spot.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's really interesting. We've got there's just a lot of people that are really involved in it, and because you've got so prolific around here with the opportunities to hunt and fish. We have a high percentage of folks that still hunt and fish.
Kelton Hatch is our guest from Idaho Fish and Game, and right now we're playing a little ping pong with the temperature. It's gone from 29 to 30 to 29 to 30. We're back at 30. That's our high for the day. looking for a high of 33. It's 11 minutes after 9 o'clock. You have a list of things that you were looking at today, and big game seasons setting meetings, and obviously people, first of all, for the novice hunter or the non-hunter, you got to explain a little bit about the different seasons for people.
You bet. And we just barely wrapped up big game season. Deer, elk, and antelope seasons are just really getting over. And what we're doing right now is we've got a new big game manager in at the office. His name is Daryl Mites. If you guys haven't met him, stop by and meet him. And we've got some other new staff that's also there. But right now we're getting ready to change things up for next hunting season, or see if there's any problems with this year. So number one, we need your guys' hunter report cards sent in. So if a hunter buys a permit, they have to go online and fill out whether they harvested an animal. We don't have a mandatory check for all our animals, so they do it online. And then if you've got any proposed changes, please send them to Daryl Mites, MEINTS, at idfg.idaho.gov. And we've got about 150 comments right now from different sportsmen. We're going to have scoping meetings or meetings to talk to sportsmen about the proposed changes on February 24th, 25th, and 26th, and that's in Haley, Twin Falls, and Burley. And so, would love to hear from you. Give us a call. You can call us here at the radio, or you can call us at the office at 324-4359 and give us your ideas on what you'd like to see change for next hunting season.
And if you'd like to actually talk to Kelton this morning, you can give us a shout at 736-0300. You're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX, Top Story with Bill Colley. You can also hear us online at newsradio1310.com. And you really need to know just the size of the take during the course of a year.
Well, we do. We have about 150,000 mule deer hunters in the state. And just in the South Hills alone, just these hills just down south of us, we have about 900 hunters down there, and we have an estimated population. Right now we're out flying. I've got another note on there that we're out flying and counting game animals on winter range. We're also starting trapping this week, where we're net gunning elk and putting radio collars on them, as well as mule deer. So you may see us out and about. We have a pretty good idea of the number of animals we have on the ground. Now we just need to know what the hunter's success was, how many days they put in, and it helps us kind of calibrate and figure out how many permits we should issue for each of those areas to keep the herds viable.
When you actually you're able to track some of the elk, they will travel vast distances.
It's crazy. We've got mule deer that basically go from Fairfield, that have their fawns in the Fairfield area, but then will migrate clear back to Arco, which is no warmer than Fairfield, but they migrate back to Arco for the winter months. And we have elk that are coming from Stanley Basin, clear up over Galena Summit, and end up over by Mountain Home, down on I-84, which is nearly 150 miles, and so that's why we try to comment on different building programs when people are putting in subdivisions, or when, there's new highways or interstates going in, because they do impact our wildlife and their migrations.
In a lot of cases, that's because those migrations have been going on thousands of years. And you notice that, for instance, when you come out of Utah and you come up 84, there are a lot of signs explaining that, because before that highway was there, they were crossing.
And when that highway was first established, about 5,000 deer died on the shoulder of it, because they'd put fences on it, and it cut down a major migration route out of the Burley area down into northern Utah. Those deer would migrate that direction, then come back and forth. And those herds have struggled ever since that interstate was put in. And they've reestablished some other migrational routes, but we've got a big study going on right now, going over Sweetser Summit down there, where we've got road cameras monitoring heavy trafficked areas, and we're actually trying to work with the Highway Department on possibly fencing or getting underpasses and things like that for that area to help preserve those mule deer populations, as well as keep people safe.
Yeah, I know driving through Nebraska a couple of weeks ago, I was coming down Route 80 heading west, and in a span of about a mile and a half, I saw 4 carcasses. So again, that's one of those areas where it's been a traditional
migration area, you bet. And that's what those radio collars help us do. It helps us be able to monitor where they're moving to, and we do it on sage and sharp-tailed grouse. We do it on elk and deer and pretty much about every critter out there, so that we can kind of figure out where they're moving to.
Now, we should point out that what you do and the effort that goes into this every year into such a large department is one of those things that costs do increase. And so
it does.
We've got a budget that will be crafted in Boise this year. Mm-hmm. It's got to take into account some of those changes. I know the public would like things to get cheaper, but that's not the way it works. So there may be some changes coming.
Well, and I appreciate you bringing me into that, because what we've got going on is we're looking for a price lock fee increase. And I hate the word fee increase, but it is. That's what it is. We haven't had a fee increase for hunting and fishing licenses for Idaho residents for the past 10 years, and costs have gone up about 22%, and for fish feed alone has gone up 174%. So we've reduced production on fish by almost 18%. And what we'd like to do is people that are traditional buyers, about 60% of our sportsmen, out of the people that buy it, about 40% of them buy licenses every year. And 60% of them buy it this year, then they skip a year or 2 years, and then they buy a license. With the fee lock, what we're looking at doing is people that buy a license every year can buy it for this year's price and buy it for that same price the next year and the next year. Then we'll reevaluate in 3 years. But what we're hoping to do is if we could just get 10% more people to buy a license every year, it'd increase our budget by over $1 million, which would help us to be able to cover some of those costs and expenses of things. Thank goodness gas prices have dropped, because that's going to help us, because our job is driving a lot, patrolling and stuff. But no, that's going on. If you have any questions on that, you can go to our Fish and Game website at fishandgame.idaho.gov, and we've got a whole page of question and answers on what it's going to, how it's going to go into effect, and what we're looking. The legislature has to look at it, so if you're in favor of it, please get a hold of your state legislator.
You bring up the driving. We have to, in a couple of minutes, we have a break coming up. But when I was a kid growing up, we had a fellow lived down the street, and that was his job. Where I lived, people were always jacking deer out of season.
Yeah.
So he was a busy Mr. Webb. And of course, a very nice man, but he had this huge territory he had to drive. But he had like a sixth sense. He knew where things were going on, because he would just show up in these places, and he'd usually get the arrest. Is there? A lot of it just comes down to the public notifying someone that something's.
That's huge. Yeah, I'm chuckling over it, because I never heard of jacking animals out of the great terminology. Or poaching, but jacking, that's a good one.
Depends on what part of the country you live in.
It depends on what part of the country you're from, and so no, I get a kick out of that. But no, we have officers that spend a lot of time, but 90% of our cases are solved by the public calling us, and they can either call us at the office or call us on the CAP hotline, which I don't have memorized. It's a 1-800 number, but it's on the back of. It's on your hunting license. So if you got your hunting license, it's got the CAP number on there, and you can call and get a reward for turning somebody in. But no, that's a huge issue that we have every year, especially right now. I mean, right now we've got all these deer. We've got snow in the mountains. We had snow in the mountains, but it still pushed them down lower onto their winter ranges. And this is when we start losing big bucks. People go up there, they see these deer with huge antlers, they shoot them, and they take their antlers. And so, give us a call if you see something like that going on.
All right, we've got more coming up in just a couple of minutes with Kelton Hatch from Idaho Fish and Game. Don't go away. As Bill O'Reilly would say, we know where you live.
We can talk about ice fishing too.
What's coming up?
I says we can also talk about ice fishing if we.
All right, we're going to talk about ice fishing in just a couple of minutes with Kelton Hatch for Idaho Fish and Game. News Radio 1310 KLIX, newsradio1310.com. Also, you can reach us at 736-0300. Couple of notes I wanted to pass along about some of our fine sponsors and some of their fine products here at News Radio 1310 KLIX. Stanley & Company introducing the new Lawan Honey Loader. It's capable of loading all types of manure, anywhere from liquid to frozen and dry. This time of year, that's kind of you don't know what, well, there's an old line crapshoot, but I guess that's a little too close to what we're talking about, isn't it? You just don't know what it's going to be when you get up in the morning. Low HP requirements, fast loading up to 7 miles per hour, fast unloading rear hydraulic gate, one pass down the lane, and the manure is picked up. Vacuum as you scrape with no water added with the Lawan Honey Vac. Reduced odor, lower labor costs. Scrape once a day, loads thick manure. Where they have a large inventory of Lawan parts in stock, on-site service, you can call Tanner or Kelly, Today, it's Stanley and Company, and let me give you that telephone number a couple of times, 324-3341. That's 324, and I do want to mention 3341. Also, a couple of other points, too. Got a new business in the area that's operating, and it's called Canyon Pond. Give me a minute there to swallow. I needed a drink of water, and my cup is about 6 feet behind me instead of a couple feet behind me. Canyon Pond, new business operating here in Twin Falls. Canyon Pond is open on Shoshone Street. That's just across the street from Will's Toyota. Nice, clean, friendly environment, locally owned. That's always a key, isn't it? You want to keep the money here instead of sending it off to somewhere like Bentonville, Arkansas. The Walton family, they may be nice people. They don't necessarily need more of your money. Brand new and used items. Lots of miscellaneous items, including fishing poles, tools, woodworking equipment, recreational equipment, and much more. They're on Facebook, too. Look for Canyon Pond. The telephone number, 933-2600. That's 933-2600. Kelton, we have a telephone caller, I believe, who'd like to join us.
Great.
And I want to mention Kelton's going to be here until 10 o'clock this morning. He'll take some of your telephone calls as well, if you're so inclined. It's 9:26 now, and you're listening to News Radio 1310, KLIX, newsradio1310.com. And you're up next on Top Story. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. I got a question about the bald eagles over at Window or Buell, wherever that's at.
Over Buell.
How long have they been migrating there, and how long do they stay?
You know, they've been migrating there as long as I can remember, or anybody else. I'm guessing for hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Okay.
It's really cool. Have you been down there and looked at them?
I have. I've got some pictures. They're awesome.
It's pretty phenomenal. Sometimes I've gone down there and counted as many as 500.
Oh, wow. I've seen about 100.
Yeah, and so get down behind, I think it's the Crow's Nest, that little bar down there just above the canyon rim, and they'll fill those trees on cold days.
Wow.
And so it's really cool to go down there and to view those. If you haven't been out and around, it's just right up there on the canyon rim. And
yeah, I talked to one of the teachers about 5-6 years ago, and this is the first time I've been out there to see them.
Yeah, it's really a spectacular sight. That's one thing about this area. A lot of people don't know. If you don't get out and about, or you don't talk about things like that, people miss out on little things like that. Right now, the Snake River is, if you go down to the Hagerman WMA just down below, you can see multiple species of raptors down there right now, hawks and eagles. Lots of bald eagles hanging out down around there. Also, you can go up and do the view those eagles up there on the canyon rim where you're at. Plus, there's thousands of ducks and waterfowl that are down there on the WMA too. So next time you run down and look at those eagles, just run off the hill over there to the Hagerman Wildlife Management Area, and you can walk those back ponds and look at all those ducks out there too. It's a pretty cool day.
And it's a big success story too in wildlife management that you have all of those.
Oh, it is. It's phenomenal. You know, I mean, from the event of DDT to where we hardly had any. I remember it was kind of funny when I was a kid. I grew up on a cattle ranch right on the border of Idaho, Wyoming. And, you know, the nearest town was 35 miles away. And I can still remember the first time I saw a golden or a bald eagle. And it was like we pulled over and it's just like, holy criminy, that's an eagle, you know. Mm-hmm. And now you see them everywhere. It's just it's amazing, you know. I never saw hawks even when I grew up out there because of the different chemicals that they were using at one time that made the egg shell soft and they didn't survive. So
we have time for a question from our next caller, but we'll have to do the answer following the other side of 9:30. News Radio 1310 KLIX, and you're up next. Nope, I think they've decided to wait until the next half hour.
Okay, great.
Got about a minute left before we wrap up. Some of the things you still want to talk about in the next half hour.
You know, some of the things I want to talk about is, you know, I want to talk to folks about what they saw this year hunting and fishing, just to get ready for these meetings if you want to call in on that. Then also we've got a bunch of volunteer programs going on for habitat improvement programs. I was going to go over the season wrap-ups, talk about things that are coming to the end, how the seasons have gone, and then I was also going to touch on ice fishing and local fishing opportunities.
You know the most unusual thing I ever saw out in the woods during hunting season?
It scares me to ask.
A rusty old 49 Buick.
Okay.
We've got more on the way. Idaho Fishing Game, Kelton Hatch joining us in studio. News Radio 1310 KLIX, Top Story with Bill Colley. Also, you can listen online, newsradio1310.com. Our guest in the studio this hour on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com is Kelton Hatch with Idaho Fish and Game. And actually, you were asking folks if they had they could help you out with some numbers here to even give you a shout on the radio this morning about what they saw during the course of the season.
Or things that they'd like to see change for this upcoming season, because right now with this being in the scoping, things are going to change. Typically at our big game meetings, where we've done it before, is we have a scoping meeting or just an open house where people come in and talk to different folks from the department about, I may be covering the elk station or talking about mule deer or something like that. This year we're actually going to have a presentation and people are going to ask questions during that. But the things that we're going to change, how we're going to scope the things that we're talking about changing is we as a department know where the population numbers are setting. What we're looking for the sportsmen is how to achieve the numbers that we need to have out there. And so if there's any tweaks or changes in hunting seasons you'd like to see, things you're not happy with that you'd like to see changed, give me a shout, and we can definitely put that in our scoping program.
And we have a caller with us now. In fact, I should point out, if you'd like to reach Kelton during the course of this hour, you can give us a call at 736-0300. And our next caller is waiting patiently for us on News Radio 1310 KLIX, and you're on the air.
Good morning.
Morning.
Welcome to Magic Valley, Bill. Hi, Kelton. Scott here.
Oh, hi. How you doing?
Good. I got a question for you. Maybe you can elaborate on the deal. I heard just a tidbit about controlled moose hunt in the South Hills area. Could you talk about the numbers and number of permits and some of that?
Yes. What we're proposing is to have 2 permits down on the South Hills in Unit 54. The numbers in the tough part about this, to have a solid number on that area, is just being able to, we haven't been able to fly it as yet. We have a lot of anecdotal information, a lot of stuff coming in from other sportsmen. In one given day, I actually looked at 7 different bull moose myself down there. And that was over just a small portion of it. We feel like we have a very strong, sustained population. We've had moose showing up in Kimberly. We've had moose at the Twin Falls Airport. We've had moose in Burley, several moose in Burley. And then we've also had them down at the bull moose that have been frequenting Twin Falls. And so, we feel like there's a harvestable surplus up there for sportsmen to be able to participate in, where it won't impact the overall population.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you.
First time I ever saw a moose. I got to go back about 14 years. I had just taken a job in Vermont. I'd been working there a couple of months. And Memorial Day weekend, my mother, my sister, and my niece came in to visit. And I was explaining to them, you won't see any moose in this part of Vermont. And so they went home after the weekend, and that Tuesday night I was driving home from work, and about 3 miles from the house, sure enough, there's one standing on an embankment looking at me as I'm coming down the road.
He heard you he heard you.
Yeah, a little radar went up, and there he was. And then I drove into the diner down the street, and I mentioned it, and a woman said, "A moose? Here?" So apparently I hadn't been steered wrong, but this guy just decided to wander off the reservation.
Well, and they do. This is an expanding population. I mean, 20 years ago, it was no such thing as moose over in the Magic Valley, but we've had them moving in slowly from southeastern Idaho, and we started a hunt just a few years ago over in Unit 55, which is north of Burley, and now we've got a surplus population of them in 54, and it's nice to see the moose population increasing. It's not nice for people to run into them with vehicles.
No.
That's the tough part. When you're driving down the road and all of a sudden a big black critter steps out in front of your car, and it leaves one of my best friends was driving a little fast on a backcountry road back home, and he had a cow moose sitting in the front seat with him. And fortunately, it was on the passenger side, and she got out of the car and walked off. It didn't even hurt her. It didn't break any legs or anything. Smaller car, so they're fun to live with.
Got about a minute for our next caller to get a question out. We'll try to get an answer. It might be a little complex in the next segment of the program as well. But you're up next. You're on 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com.
Thank you. My question pertained to the sage grouse listing, and more specifically with the passage of the latest spending bill in Congress. I seem to remember seeing that it would exempt the listing of the sage grouse in the several western states where they potentially will be put on the endangered species list. Do you know anything about that
Kelton, maybe you want to hold on to that one because we have a break coming up here in just a moment, but we can get back to that immediately out of that.
You bet. I'll go over that right when we come back from the break.
And again,
what I know, I don't know everything, but I've got some pretty good handle on it.
Again, for people who are tuning in today too, if they don't reach you on the air, they can reach you afterward.
You bet. 324-4359.
All right, we've got more coming up. Idaho Fish and Game. Kelton Hatch joining us in studio. About 20 minutes to go before we wrap up Top Story today with Bill Colley on News Radio 1310 KLIX, newsradio1310.com. So we had a caller in the last segment of the program, and we'll get back to that question the caller had just a few minutes ago. You're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX, newsradio1310.com, Top Story with Bill Colley. And Kelton Hatch is with us from Idaho Fish and Game in the studio until 10 o'clock this morning, or thereabouts, as we have, of course, Mike Huckabee coming up in just a few minutes. I do want to mention Clearwater Equipment has been the largest power equipment dealer in the Wood River Valley for over 10 years and now has a location in Twin Falls. Clearwater Power Equipment offers sales, service, and parts. Also, Husqvarna, full line of outdoor power products. Husqvarna servicing dealers have both the experience and the knowledge to know outdoor power equipment inside and out. They have Husqvarna factory-trained technicians. And Echo, best warranty in the industry with a 5-year residential and 2-year commercial warranty. Echo has been a leading innovator and manufacturer of outdoor power equipment for over 40 years. Echo handheld equipment, easy starting, long-lasting, and user-friendly, as well as factory-trained technicians. So you can learn more at 252 Washington Street, and the number is 734-7767. That's 734-7767. So our caller in the last segment of the program had an interesting question, and we're talking birds in this situation.
Sage grouse, you bet. And so, he was talking about a bill that had been passed, and I don't know the specifics on the bill, but I'll give you some background on what's going on with sage grouse. Right now, just about every study we have going on, not every study, but we've got a lot of sage grouse work going on right now. We're really concerned about the listing of the sage grouse. Last year, we actually had an increase in overall numbers of sage grouse out here. One of the big things that we hear is the major concern with sage grouse being listed is it would have such an economic impact, devastating economic impact on Idaho agriculture economy, and also on recreation, because a lot of those places, if something like that had happened, if they go on the endangered species list, it's going to close a lot of recreation opportunities, as well as the possibility of grazing and any type of other activities going on out there. So I know that the government is there. There's a lot of concern for that right now. We've got 3 or 4 tracking programs going on right now on nesting habitat, nesting survival, and things like that. And so I think we'll still have a season for them this year. We're looking at changing even our hunting seasons and things like that on them. And but I do think something will happen within the next year and a half. We'll know for sure what's going to happen. So I don't think that they'll be listed this year, and I think this gentleman is correct that they did have a thing in there that they didn't want to see them listed at this time, and so for some of these western states.
For people who would like to know a little bit more and really get some background on a lot of rules, regulations, upcoming events, various seasons, obviously you could just send them to the website, right?
You bet. We've got an info question place on the website, and you can send that in, and the people that get those questions will send them to the proper folks that know everything about that, and get that information out. Or you can call us at the regional office, and I can give you some numbers, or somebody else there, some of our front office staff can get you to the right people to help get those answered. That's our biggest issue right now, is just getting information out to the general public. We want people to know what's going on and what their opportunities are for the next year, and what's going on with wildlife in the area.
We've got Reverend Governor Mike Huckabee coming up in just a couple of minutes, but in the meantime, we'll take a call, and we may be able to get back to this caller's question, too, if it's a lengthy answer following Governor Huckabee. You're on the air on 1310 KLIX. Good morning.
Good morning. I was wondering if there's any plan for stocking Opie Reservoir with trout.
There is, and we'll stock some this spring, and we've stocked a few this winter, and then we'll stock some over the summer. You bet. We're actually they've kind of changed things where we're stocking a little larger fish right now in some of these area reservoirs. We're trying to reduce the number of fish because what we're finding out is we're having fewer of the small fish return to krill, meaning anglers aren't catching as many of them as we like, and we're finding out if we raise these fish a little bit bigger. So if you see less numbers of fish being dumped into a pond, don't be worried because they're bigger, and so there's more highly likelihood that you're going to catch them. And yes, we will be dumping some more fish in Oakley.
I think, I don't know, 2 or 3 years back, whenever it was, you planted a bunch of kamloops in there, and they turned out to be big, beautiful fish. I would like to see that again. I don't know what the chances are. Another thing that I would like is I'd like to see the ice fishing put off for a year and have that a 2-fish limit in that reservoir because it just gets fished out right away.
I'm going to write that down because I think, right now we're looking at our next 5-year plan for fishing regulations. We've actually been really looking closely at doing things like this, possibly even going back to an opening day, so it's not a year round. And so, there's a lot of opportunity. If anybody else has any questions or comments I'd like to make on fishing, call Doug McGargle at the Fish and Game office at 324-4359 or Scott Stanton. I'm going to write these down so I don't forget them, but I think those are good comments.
I want to thank him for the call, and we have Governor Huckabee coming up in just a moment. The Huckabee Report brought to you exclusively by the financial advisors at Waddell & Reid in Twin Falls. You can reach them at 736-6563. That's 736-6563. And we've got more coming up in just a few minutes. In fact, more discussion on some of these topics. Maybe we'll get a couple of minutes to talk about the need for planters.
You bet.
All right. That's ahead. Thank you very much, Governor Huckabee. And, of course, we'll be joined by him again. I expect him to join us about the same time tomorrow, right here. Tomorrow, Friday already, as this week goes racing by. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on 1310 KLIX, News Radio 1310.com. And Kelton Hatch is our guest in this hour of the program from Idaho Fish and Game. I do want to mention, of course, we've been bringing this up the last couple of days about those people who are doing some intense farming, and sometimes you need to get up in the sky and take a look at what you're working with, especially soil and the like down below. Infrared Baron believes that a comprehensive imaging service should start with low-cost, high-frequency flights. Managers and consultants meet regularly with the experienced staff to review the recent photos and devise solutions for optimizing yield at every growth stage of the crop. And, of course, flexible solutions for your farm needs, Farm More of Idaho, 324-3341. That's 324-3341. And, again, the American farmer has been probably the greatest success story in history with what the American farmer has been able to produce with yield compared to where it was just 100 years ago. About 5 minutes to go before we wrap up the program today. And Kelton, a couple of things you did want to touch on before we said goodbye. What
the big things that I'd like to hit is, number one is we are getting ready for our spring planting. Had a lot of fires in the area, and so what we do is we gather volunteers from different organizations and groups to go out and plant bitterbrush and seeds and different plants. We're starting to get those folks lined up. So if you're interested in getting your group or you just want to show up individually, give us a call. You can talk to Tanner Ray Alberti. She's our volunteer coordinator, and she's at 324-4359. And then I was just going to touch on hunting season wrap-up. It's been an incredible year. Yeah, I know you haven't been here for very long, but the waterfowl has been great. Mule deer, elk, some of the biggest animals we've ever harvested this year. Lots of good antler growth and things like that. All our deer season and elk season pretty well wrapped up now, but we've got waterfowl season going until January 23rd, and most of our upland game birds that are still open. Pheasants closed at the end of last month, but we've still got huns and chuckers and quail season's going on, and I actually get a head off for the next 2 days and go chase chuckers out in the desert. So I'm pretty excited.
You mentioned the waterfowl. I have duck hunting seems to be still a specialty for a lot of people. I have friends who gave up deer hunting years ago, and they gave up turkey hunting years ago. But when it comes to duck hunting, this is like a very specialized. You have to have a lot of specialized gear, but they love it.
Oh, it is, and this is a hub for waterfowl hunters right now. I mean, some of the boys from Duck Dynasty, they show up down here, and they're looking at. I don't know whether they purchased property, but I know that they've been looking, and they hunt down here for years. We have people come in from all over the country to hunt right down here in the Hagerman Valley, and so, yeah, that's one thing I found out about hunters. We're all kind of like gearheads. You know, if there's a new piece of gear out there to make it a little bit easier or funner or give us a little bit of advantage, and there's a lot of the mother of invention is necessity, and people feel a lot of necessity for hunting gear because my wife just doesn't quite understand why I need this new shotgun every year. And so I says, it's new, it's different, it shoots different, it doesn't kick as hard, it patterns better, babe. But
I had a school teacher, and I was in his room after class one day, and he got his tax return back, and his wife was talking about what they needed around the home, and he looked at it and he just simply said, "We're going to buy guns."
Yes. I'm right with him.
Kelton Hatch, we'll see you again in a couple of weeks.
Hey, sounds good, sir.
All right, super. Joining us for Idaho Fish and Game this morning. News is coming up next from the Fox Radio Network. Also, Rush Limbaugh for the next 3 hours right here on News Radio 1310 KLIX. NewsRadio1310.com if you're listening out of town online. And we'll tee it up and do it all over again. God willing, and the creek don't rise tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock right here.